Sales is a uniquely competitive career. You compete for business, and you're also encouraged to compete with people within your own company for bonuses and status. Healthy competition leads to real results, they say. I've worked in highly competitive landscapes my entire career. The way I was taught to look at it was if I didn't have the account, that means my competitor did. That wasn't good. In my career, we were encouraged to really know our competitors, not just their offers, but them as people. I knew my competitors by name. I knew what kind of car they drove. Under the guise of competitor analysis, we were encouraged to learn as much as possible about the people gunning for our business. And this kind of thinking has had a long-lasting effect on me. In fact, just last week, I attended a national podcasting conference, and in the same convention center, I saw a company I used to compete against was having their annual sales meeting. Even now, I saw red when I saw that company's name on those doors. What is wrong with me? Obviously, I'm still unpacking how damaging this was to my psyche. Not because I'm weak, but because this level of competition didn't motivate me in the way my company wanted it to. Instead, it gave my competitors permission to live rent-free in my head. It hindered my progress and it shook my confidence. So I'm going to talk about the dangers of being too focused on your competition, and I'll give you suggestions for what you should be focused on instead. Today on Don't Just Sell. Most sales podcasts give you more tactics. This one proves you don't need them. I'm Rebecca Kilday, and this is Don't Just Sell, the podcast where your sales career gets easier when you quit selling like you've been trained and start selling like yourself. One year at my company's national sales meeting, I signed up for a breakout session called Know Your Competition. I assumed it would be about how my company's offerings compared with our traditional competitors' offerings. I was wrong. I was excited to go to this breakout because the person leading it and I started about the same time, so I saw him as a real peer in our space. And I also knew that he was having success at a level I was simply not experiencing yet. I was really excited to hear what he had to say. So I went in and sat down, and he opened the session by telling a story about a time he cold called on a business. So he did not have an appointment. He showed up at a business where he did not already have the account. And when he was there, the person who did have the business, that sales rep, was there, having a meeting with the client. So traditional protocol is you say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you would be here. I didn't have an appointment. I'll find another time to come by. And then you excuse yourself and you move on with your life. This particular day, he left the office, and instead of driving away, he sat in his car at that business and waited until the competitor rep left the office. And then he followed the competitor rep the whole rest of the day to the other places of business that he had. And then he followed him home. He followed him home because he wanted to, quote, see what neighborhood he lived in. So as he's telling this story, I'm looking around the room. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're like, I can't be the only one who thinks this is crazy. So I'm looking around the room hoping to catch the eye of someone else who's uncomfortable as I am. And all I saw was all these reps nodding their heads in agreement, like this was the exactly right thing to do. And it made me think, am I not taking the competition seriously enough? Am I the one that's not considering learning about my competition enough? And so that sent me into a tailspin of looking up my competitors on social media, looking up where they lived, learning where their kids went to school. I'm not proud of this. I'm just telling you, That's how strong the competitive culture was when I was at this company in sales. And I've known for years that there are problems with focusing this much attention on my competitors. But it took me leaving that job and getting some distance for me to be able to name it specifically. So here are some things that I can see clearly now. The first one is, with competition comes comparison. I worried too much about how much my prospect liked my competition, and not enough about if their needs were being met. And secondly, I had to admit to myself that competition put me in a scarcity mindset instead of an abundant one. I was already trying to defend myself from the competition before I even got into the boardroom. It was self-defeating, and it was burning me out at an alarming rate. And finally, and this is perhaps the most important piece, competition pulls focus from your true purpose. I spent a ton of time strategizing not about how I could best serve my prospect, but how I could compete against my competition. What could I say that would lay a trap for them later? What could I leave behind that I know they'll see? I focused on setting my competitor up for failure instead of setting my prospect up for success. I had to get to the place where I realized that all my focus on my competition was really about my insecurity. My insecurity about myself as a sales rep, and my insecurity about whether or not I was good enough to earn business away from my competitors. And then when I did win, would I be able to deliver on my promises? I wish I could tell you this insecurity went away in one shining moment of inspiration. But it took years of getting better and building my own confidence. And finally, I began to view my competition in a new light. They weren't out to get me. They're doing what I'm doing, just for another company. That's it. I learned I was giving competitors too much time and attention. I remember one conversation I had with a prospect much later in my career, and they directly asked what's the difference between my company and the company they were currently using. And I could have rattled off a list of niche features a mile long, but instead I said, well, with my company, you get to work with me. And I promise you, no one takes your success more seriously than I do. Sometimes the message really is that simple. Focus on you and the value you bring, and watch your prospects become clients at a higher rate than you ever experienced. Before I share what to focus on instead, ask yourself, is your team spending more energy tracking competitors than understanding prospects? If you want to shift your sales culture from scarcity to confidence, I've created an email template you can send to your manager to start this conversation, and the link is in the show notes. I had to do a lot of work to get to the outlook I have today about competition. So I'll save you all the years it took me, and I'll share a few things I keep in mind today. The first one is, don't be threatened by your competition. Be inspired. I once asked a photographer friend of mine how she positioned her photography business in comparison to all the other photographers in our area. And she said, I choose to be inspired and challenged by their work. I thought about that statement for days. She chose to be inspired. It's a choice. If your competitor does something well, don't worry about how that's defeating you. Learn from their success and take it as a source of inspiration. Next is, you should focus on what you can do and your offering. You should not know everything about your competition. You should know everything about what you offer and what your personal strengths are within that offer. At the end of the day, your main focus should be on your prospect. What do they need that only you can provide? Solve their problems. Leave the competition for someone else to worry about. For this episode's script swap, I'm going to give you some verbiage you can use in common competitive situations. It's not productive to refuse to acknowledge a competing company or rep when asked about them directly. So how do you handle a situation where your prospect asks you outright to explain the difference between your company and your competition? I like to communicate these differences in a story. It sounds like, when I work with clients who used to work with your current company, they tell me they love our customer dashboard so they can see all their communications in one place. When you say something like that, you have the opportunity to highlight a deficiency of their current company, like a dashboard they don't have in this example, while highlighting the positive experience people are having with your company. Let's do another one. How do you handle a situation where your prospect says they already heard bad things about you from their current company? This happens all the time, and it's challenging to correct the wrong information without bad-mouthing the person who gave it. So I like to say something like, "Oh, wow, I'm sorry to hear someone had a bad experience with us, especially when I know 80% of our customers say they prefer our systems to others they've worked with. Can I share some of my favorite success stories with you?" In both examples, you shift the focus from your competitor to the story you have to tell about your offering. No matter what you're selling, there's someone out there selling something similar. You can focus your energy on beating them, or you can focus your energy on communicating your value to your prospect. My mom used to say there'll always be someone prettier, younger, and richer than you, so you can try to compete, or you can be the best version of yourself you can be. And it's easier said than done. But take it from someone who had to unlearn years of toxic competition rhetoric. Being inspired is a choice. And you can make the choice today to elevate yourself from someone who just sells to someone who sells inspired.